James Angawa Anditi, who now joins me in studio, just to shed light on how secure we are in terms of water in this country. Thank you very much for holding on and for waiting for this. Very interesting. At least I have my water to drink, but this is not practical to a lot of people in this country. Just in the past few days, we've seen a lot of pictures on social media of kids, children, mothers, women, and old men drinking dirty water. Now, this brings to the question, how water secure are we in this country?
Thank you, Ken, and appreciation for having me to talk about water. This would not have come at the right time. As you have rightly said, we are at the most critical level in terms of our water situation. I would want to begin by saying that progressively Kenya has really tried to make water a center stage in our development. But one of the things that we realize is that although a lot of efforts have been made, currently as we speak, almost over 45% of the Kenyan population do not have access to clean and drinking water. And 70% don't have access to safe sanitation. And when you talk about this, we are looking at about 18 million people.
That's almost a half of the population.
Sure.
Yes.
And we need to understand the history, the historical chronology of where we are. One of the things that has been a challenge is how we perceive progressive development in our water sector. Because over time, we've tried to come up with policies that make sure that people get access. But there are pockets of this country that I would refer to as fragile areas. Okay. That right from the independence, they've lagged behind in development. And if you look at the development indexes and indicators, they're behind in almost everything. So when you talk about water, then that reflects to those places that have been neglected and marginalized. Okay. And basically, when we say that the 18 million people have lack access, the majority of them are on those fragile contexts. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Which is something that we should not be witnessing, close to half a century or more than a half a century post-independent. But what is really the problem? Because there was an aquifer that was discovered in one of those areas. How comes this is not coming handy?
Well, I would want to crystallize it to 5 key areas. Okay. One of them, and which is very critical, is to look at the policies that we've been developing. And while, as I said before, that there's been a lot of progress, but you realize that the evolution and the fact that water sector has been, let me say, not fully developed, has brought in a lot of issues in terms of governance. And so the capacity is there in terms of human resource and technology, but then without very clear policies, it becomes very difficult for people or potential investors to invest in development and harnessing of those water resources. Okay. And let me give you just a very clear example. You've seen a lot of squabbles around inter-country water resources. One county, fighting against another. Yeah, Nairobi, Murang'a. Surely. Yes. You've seen issues about conflicts related to water, especially in the ASAL areas. And you've seen, big projects being talked of, but then...
The dam projects?
For sure. Yes. So the main issue is that if there are no clear policies, then the potential investors in these water systems, draw cold feet. And so as we speak then, as a way forward, I like the resolutions that were made in the last 6th annual governors conference in Grenada, that water needs to find its rightful place in the Big 4 agenda. In fact, from where I sit, I would say we need to talk about Big 5 agenda.
And water
so that
should be one of them.
Water to be one of them.
Already we have Big 5 because corruption is an official part of it. So water, so Big 6.
Well, that is your word.
Yes.
But really, because water resource management requires a lot of investment. In the last financial year, the government was able to commit around 5.8 billion Kenya shillings against a requirement of 16 11.5 billion Kenya shillings. That means we've got a deficit of 11 billion. And so when we talk about really the big four agenda, we cannot be able to achieve that without water. Look at our health system. We are overburdened because of diseases that are related to water. Look at our education sector, the construction sector. We can't talk about construction without water. Look at our food security right now as we speak. Kenyans should not really be talking about hunger because the resources are there. We are capable of harnessing water. But because of these policies, then we are not able to really get our right footing. Now, the other thing is about information system. Because the devolution and the devolving of water systems, as I said earlier, has not given the players the critical rigor to really have a very clear documented data on the water demand and water, water resource development. And so because of this, people who, like World Vision, who are players in this field, often feel that we need to do more to make sure that when we do investment into this field, then we have got clear data and that the right people are reached by water and that sustainability measures are also taken in place. Okay. One thing that I would want to add to that is governance issues. Because whereas, as I said before, we really do a lot of investment, but the governance of the water structures and systems that we already have really not been very good. Okay. Water management board of directors, their appointment are not participatory, and without public participation, then they are not accountable. And so you find that very noble ideas about water systems are really not able to take off as envisaged. Okay, because essentially I wanted to ask the question where the work of the private sector ties in with the work of the government. And the kind of commitment, for example, we've seen in World Vision, right, is not the kind of commitment we've seen in the government in terms of scandals, in terms of resource allocation and all. Then how do you complement their work, or how do they complement your work with all these difficulties surrounding them? Yeah, let me begin by saying that as World Vision, as one of the players in this field, we recognize that the government is a key partner, in terms of policy regulations and the rest. But our role really is to supplement the efforts and also to advocate. And that we do through, through public participation, really mobilizing the grassroots and citizens to demand for services. That has been very good. We have got models that have worked in parts of this country. The other thing is that we realize that Kenya being a water scarce country, the management of our water towers is very critical.
What percentage does water cover in this country? If you say it's very scarce.
I mean, you talk about, if you look at generally our water towers and we relate it to the forest coverage, less than 10%, because that is where our water comes from. Okay. And so the answer lies in how do we manage our ecosystem. So World Vision, as over the last couple of years, been engaging communities at grassroots level, because when they understand that our water towers are the source of our waters, then they will be able to take practical accountability about managing resources at their own level, so that they don't cut trees, they don't encroach into riparian lands, and the rest. And so we have got very good models that are working in Elgeyo Marakwet, farmer natural managed natural resources, where farmers have been able to reclaim, swaths of land just through rehabilitation. And so if this can be scaled up, because as what we are advocating for, then how can we then put in more resources to these promising practices so that then we can see regeneration of our water towers. That will be a very big solution to our water crisis.
Now that you've mentioned Elgeyo Marakwet and the work that you're doing there and the positive work that farmers have done, how much of disservice is the noise around the dams there doing to this initiative?
Well, I would want to put it this way, Ken. As a country, we cannot realize development and quick development at it if we don't talk with one voice and if we don't pull in one direction. The issue is that if we talk different languages as development practitioners, as government, civil society, then the grassroots, the grassroots citizens get confused. And therefore, for me, the issue is that why don't we provide facts? Because Kenyan citizens are progressive. I mean, if you look at this region, you've got a very good population of informed citizens. Mm-hmm. And therefore, why don't we give objective information? Why then don't we rally everybody together? And because of the entrepreneurial, spirit that is in Kenya, pulling into the right direction, I believe we can be able to tackle these issues and these problems. So a lot of talks, that is not informed by critical information, that is evidence-based, will not take us anywhere. Okay. But really sitting on the desk, discussing issues, evidence, I think that is the way forward for me. Okay. Yeah.
It's unhealthy, but let's talk about, we've spoken about water, clean drinking water for irrigation and all. The policies that have been, was supposed to go to the ministry, but the policies that have been made, the decisions that have been made, for example, the 57 dams, rehabilitation, the irrigation schemes like Galana Kulalu, and all that, are these policies aligned to your work, or you have to align yourself to the policies of the government?
I wouldn't really want to talk on behalf of the ministry, and I want to put a caveat on that. Okay. But I want to say that as a civil society player, our role is to question how the policies translates to practice. Okay. And our work is to, because policies are made, but as you keep on, implementing water projects, new challenges set in, and therefore policies have to be viewed in terms of how do we keep on revising them to be in tandem with the reality. I would give you an example. As we speak, the climate change is a reality. The practices we used to do 10 years are not the same things that we need to do in this time. So we need then to go back to our policy and ask ourselves, are they addressing the current challenges that we have? And as far as I'm concerned, the Water Act 2016 has not really addressed the full issues about the water issues we are facing. Areas that I would want to specifically point out is regulation, water regulation, and water provision, because water service providers that are strewn all over this country, they need the confidence that their work and their mandate is capable to help them do their work very well. And so long as that is not been done, and I've mentioned about how the water board chairs are appointed, how they are given the mandate, how accountability is domiciled into their work, if those are not carefully laid down in the water regulations, then would still keep on having these problems. The other issue I want to talk about is again, sustainability. Because water systems are only sustainable as far as the voice of the people and their inclusion in decision making is included. One of the areas that is a challenge is how do we then bring in the marginalized who also are the hardest hit. And I talk about women because majority of our water governing systems have left out women, and yet the worst people, the people who realize the worst brunt of this. So that is one area. The other area that I also want to talk about is non-revenue losses of water. We lose a lot of water through illegal connections, through lack of maintenance. And for me, this is one area that our regulations should really be able to address. And as World Vision, we have a very progressive approach because we have viewed water as an entrepreneurial or a business managed system where we bring in public-private partnerships. And as I speak, we've got water systems that we've installed that are using e-card so that people pay water through mobile money. And therefore, they are able to then be accountable in terms of making sure that they don't lose water.
Okay. Talking about sustainability, and do you feel there's a lot of water wastage also in terms of how we recycle the water we use, and just in terms of how we consume for domestic or commercial use? Do you feel there's a lot of wastage?
For sure. One of the areas, and as I said, one of the areas why we will talk about wastage, which is true, is because we are blessed as a country with a lot of rains periodically, but then we lack the capacity to store that rainwater. So from that point, then you will begin realizing that we lose on the opportunity. And there are three areas that I want to talk about. That is reuse, recycling, and rehabilitation. So one of the things that World Vision continuously, bring to the desk and to the table when we talk about water issues is to get people to understand that every time you fail to recycle a liter of water, you are reducing or creating child mortality somewhere, because water in its form can be reused. We've seen people, and countries have, even neighboring countries are able to do it. We've seen people recycling water that has been used in the houses to do kitchen gardens. For example, in Nairobi, we shouldn't really be going to buy and be having problems with the getting, vegetables, because we can be able to recycle our kitchen water to do kitchen gardening. But these are some of the things that we need to strengthen at household level, because when we do that at household level, then we'll be food secure. We talk about construction.
I'm thinking about that, and I'm asking myself, how many people can have kitchen gardens? I'm just thinking how many can have. But there are these modern kitchen gardens that you don't even need space to.
Even your rooftops.
A rooftop, yeah,
yes,
you can use it as a garden, yes.
Yes.
So I have my answer.
That is it.
Yes.
And again, just to bring it home, when you look at the areas that we talk about as arid and semi-arid lands, the communities, over the years had very good systems that they used to conserve water. We've got technologies such as sand dams, where you can store water underground. We've got technologies that looks at conserving, water towers, as I said before. Again, because of lack of understanding and because of lack of public engagement, these good traditional ways of conservation have since, dissipated. And so again, what we are saying is that then can we empower the community, our communities? Because the answer lies in grassroots mobilization.
Okay.
If everybody understood the importance of recycling water and conservation, we wouldn't be talking about water, scarcity. Lastly, on that point, one of the potentials that we have, we've seen, our urban development is very rapid, urbanization. Buildings are constructed, but we don't really harvest that water, roof water harvesting. So one of the things of conservation and recycling is really harnessing the ability of us to conserve water and to harvest it. And I would say that, for example, if we can have policies that insist that as you put in buildings and constructions in the cities, one requirement is that you must harvest water, then we'll not be seeing a lot of water being lost.
Okay.
Yes.
Because basically we lose almost all the rainwater.
Then we go down to drill expensively underground.
Look for it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, before I let you go, we've spoken about water a lot, but we've not touched on sanitation. So probably you'll touch on sanitation before I let you go.
As I said before, 70% of our population are not able to access safe sanitation. And the worst of it is that majority of these are children and women. And I want to specifically talk about children because as a child-focused organization, World Vision has realized that unless you really invest in the children at their younger age, you won't really talk about people who are responsible in terms of our water management systems. And for the purpose of sanitation, what we have done is to bring in, approaches that are that mentor the children at schools, because at school is where they can be able to learn basic hygiene practices. So we have got children clubs, youth clubs, children clubs that actively participate in learning the practices of hygiene and sanitation. We also have community-based participatory approaches through community-led total sanitation, where we partner with particular villages and, really get them to understand why they need to make sure that they are open defecation free. Because as you go to most of our rural areas, many of the diseases that we get is because of lack of toilets.
Sanitation, yes.
So then community-led total sanitation is hinged on the fact that when people are triggered to see the impact of their human waste into their food chain system and in their health, then they are able to take an active role. Because I remember when I was young, growing, I mean, I would see my neighbors construct latrines. I participated in some of them. It wasn't something very difficult. So then how can people get to learn that latrine construction is one way of making sure that human waste is taken care of well, and that when it rains, then we don't get contamination of our surface waters, and other diseases. And
that's one of the things that you do.
That we do.
All right. Yep. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. James, Ngawa, and GT, thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us.